Hey, this is Dominic, and this is your home for the cutting-edge conversations on optimizing your personal performance, lighting up your sex life, and living a purpose-driven life of your own design.
These are the topics that Dominic and I have both struggled with in our own lives and still don't always get right. This is Brian. Welcome to the Great Man Podcast.
I think a lot of guys who like to go hard with their workouts can relate to the experience of constantly having some form of pain, strain, or injury in the body on a regular basis. Probably up until 3 or 4 years ago, I was that guy. I just thought that stuff came with the territory. I love relentless workouts like P90X and pushing myself to the limit with the 100 push-up challenge. But in those extreme pursuits, I'd be so focused on pushing myself as hard as I could that I'd inevitably hurt myself. I'd tweak my neck and be on the sideline for 2 weeks, or I'd strain something in my rotator cuff that wouldn't go away for months. And I know that Brian has dealt with back issues for over a decade that he would continue to push through. It was only when I began to prioritize being injury-free with the same level of importance as I prioritized my performance, did my body start to feel the best it ever has in my life at the age of 41. Prioritizing being injury-free meant developing a new level of body awareness around where my limits were and giving my full attention to warming up and cooling down and making off days an essential and guilt-free part of my workout regimen. And like I said, my body is looking and feeling the best it ever has without strain or injury slowing me down or causing me unnecessary pain. So today, I'm bringing to you one of my favorite personal trainers, Chloe Corpuz, to train you on how to build a high-performance and injury-free body. So who is Chloe? Chloe is a fitness trainer here at New York City's Equinox, which is my gym here, and she's an elite dancer. She spent 2 years dancing for the famed Los Angeles Lakers girls, which is where Paula Abdul got her big break, and another 2 with the New York Knicks City Dancers when she moved here to New York City. She's performed on the stages with Gwen Stefani, who's one of her idols, Wyclef, Ashanti, T-Pain, and of course, Fat Joe. And what I personally love about Chloe is that she strives for and has achieved excellence. And she brings a disciplined approach to body awareness, warm-up, and recovery to the point where she performed at the highest of levels and never sustained an injury that sidelined her. So when she teaches, she emphasizes that same level of body awareness that we fellas could certainly use a tune-up in. And I've hired Chloe a few times to run Zoom group workouts for the men in the Great Man Mastermind, and the guys love her. So in this episode, Chloe breaks down a typical 60-minute workout, and she allocates how much of that time should be dedicated to the warm-up, to the workout, and then the subsequent cool down. Chloe also points out the 2 most difficult areas of the body to activate and why you need to activate them in your warm-up to facilitate your strongest and healthiest workout. And then she pointed out to me why my typical warm-up on the elliptical machine doesn't activate one of these 2 most important areas. Chloe outlines the 3 most common injuries and ailments that she sees for the people who take her fitness classes. She talks about the difference between dynamic and static stretching and why one of those belongs in your warm-up and why the other belongs in your cool down. Chloe demystifies what fascia is and why foam rolling will save you many injuries down the road. And then finally, she talks about at the very end why diversifying your workouts can reduce your potential for injury. So enjoy today's episode on how to build a high performance and injury-free body featuring Chloe Corpuz. Chloe, it's awesome to have you on the Great Man Within podcast. I mean, you've already been training the Great Man Mastermind, and so it's only natural that we bring you on the show so that the rest of the world can hear your voice. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And it's been awesome training you guys. Such a good energy, such a good group. When you guys thanked me after class, that felt really nice.
Yeah, that's right. After the second time that you did, so we've been doing Zoom workouts with Chloe every other Saturday or something like that. And, more than half the group ends up joining. And after the last one that we did, I said to the guys, hey, let's go around the horn and say one thing that we are grateful for from Chloe's instruction today. And each man went around and recognized you in their own particular way.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you again for that.
You earned every minute of it. And one of the reasons why I felt so confident in bringing you into this group of men, Chloe, is these are high performing guys, in their 30s, 40s, some of them in their 50s, who have been very successful in their lives. And they've also become traditionally successful. And when I say traditionally successful, I mean they've made money, they have societal status, and a lot of the things on paper they're supposed to have. And they've pushed themselves really hard in the process. And they've either hurt themselves physically or, burnt themselves out mentally, emotionally. I've been there before as well. And one of the things that I've always known about you from the very first time taking your class is you aspire to and embody excellence, but there's also this calmness and emphasis that you place on stretching, recovery, and injury-free living. So what I want to do over the course of this conversation today is really unpack your philosophy of how you figured that out at such an early age. And maybe we begin with the story of your first big break, at least how I saw it was at 18 years old, you became a Laker girl for the Los Angeles Lakers.
That's right.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. I think you started dancing at the age of 3, and that at age 18, you ended up on one of the biggest stages on the Laker court. So how did that all go down?
Yeah. I mean, in a way, it was kind of perfect, and it was a natural progression of events. Started dancing when I was 3 in various styles: ballet, tap, jazz, contemporary. I was a studio competition dancer, which means after school, I would go to my dance studio. We would rehearse. And almost every weekend we would go to regional competitions. And at the end of the year, we would have a national competition. So that was the side thing, kind of probably the equivalent to maybe club sports.
Yep.
So yeah. And then in high school, I joined the dance team. So I was doing my studio and the dance team in high school for a little bit. And then I quit the studio eventually and just focused on the high school team. And that was a lot more focused on cheering at games, performing at pep rallies, like football and basketball games, which kind of prepared me for Lakers. So when I graduated high school, I got into UCLA, and I actually really wanted to be on the college dance team at UCLA because that was kind of just a natural next step that you would do after high school. You do your college dance team. I auditioned. I really wanted it. I didn't make it. There were 9 girls on the team and only really 2 spots open for new girls. So 7 girls were vets. 2 of the girls were new.
Wow. Wait, Chloe, let me get this straight. So you
Yes.
auditioned for the UCLA dance team. You did not make that team. And then you went on to become a Laker girl?
Right. So this is actually where I kind of started to believe in fate, because the Laker girls coach was there. She was one of the judges, and I could kind of tell that she kind of had her eye on me, and she was asking me questions during the interview. We had to have an interview in front of the whole panel. There was a bunch of judges. She was just one of them. And then at the end of the audition, she kind of made a general announcement, Laker girl auditions happening. And that was actually after I found out that I didn't make it, and we found out the results. Then I ended up going to the Lakers audition. That was a few weeks later. And in my mind, I was kind of just okay, this is something I want to do eventually. I know I'm probably not going to make it, but I'm just going to have fun. And I think that was kind of the mindset at that moment that really helped me through that audition.
Wow, because you were relaxed, you didn't have a lot of pressure on yourself. You just had a chance to show up and have fun?
Yeah, exactly. I was I'm just going to be here for the experience, be present. And I already had my whole life of training. So that was not something that I really had to worry about. It was just kind of staying present in the moment. They do have the first cut of the Laker Girls audition. It's just basic. We call it across the floor, but it's just where you show basic technique things that every dancer should be able to do. So that kind of weeds out people who have never danced before, because you have to have 8 years minimum, they say, of experience of dance to audition, but not everybody has that. Some people just show up, which props to them for putting themselves out there. But yeah, after that, we do pirouettes and kicks and leaps across the floor. So you can kind of tell who is really cut out for the job, because it's not just cheerleading on the Laker Girls, it's actual dancing. So you really do have to have that foundational classical training too.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about dance teams in the NBA, I mean, like the Laker girls are, from my understanding of it, it's kind of like the crown jewel. It's kind of like the cowgirls for the NFL, like the Dallas Cowboys, their dance team. And then the other one I would say is the New York City Knicks City Dancers, which you were also you dance when you moved to New York.
Right.
You danced for them for 2 years, but not to put the cart before the horse. So, there are probably hundreds of women who are trying out for the Laker girl team. And, you just come off of this rejection. What was it like for you as you kind of made your way through each of these rounds? Like what stage did you start to believe it could be a possibility that like, oh my God, I can make this team?
Right. Definitely as I progressed further and further throughout the audition, I started to want it more because it went from just something that I'm just going to have fun and do my best to, okay, now there's really a chance and I really want this. So it's 2 days long, the audition. The first day is you're there all day. There's about 5 different rounds and they make cuts after each round. So if you make it to the end of that day, then you go to the callback, which is later in the week. And you don't even find out at that callback if you made it. You have to wait a couple more days and then you get a phone call, which is kind of nice because you don't find out that you didn't make the team in front of everybody.
Right.
Then you have to wait and the suspense is real.
What was the phone call like, Chloe, when you got it?
It was actually pretty magical because I was at the beach with my friends. I was at Manhattan Beach. And I mean, I was pretty nervous the entire time, but I had my friends there to just, make me feel more relaxed. And then I finally got the call, found out that I made it. My friends were screaming. The coach couldn't even hear what I was saying because my friends were just screaming. But yeah, it was pretty surreal.
That's awesome. I mean, that's got to be one of those days you never forget, right? Like being with your friends, getting the call. And I imagine on some level it's changed the trajectory of your life because, yeah, Knicks City dancers, and then some of the celebrities you've danced with, right? Like Gwen Stefani, I think T-Pain. Who else? Like, who are the people that you've danced with and for?
Yeah, I've actually gotten a lot of opportunities through Knicks City Dancers to dance with different artists. So at Knicks games specifically, I've danced with Fat Joe, Sugar Hill Gang, Ashanti, Wyclef Jean.
Yeah.
There's probably more that I can't remember, but
I mean, when you hang around that many celebrities, it's kind of like they all seem to run together. They're all the same after a certain point. You know what? Actually, speaking of celebrities, like I know that, the tragedy earlier this year with Kobe Bryant and him losing his life in that helicopter crash. I remember following some of your Insta stories, and I know that you took that pretty hard because were you dancing when he was on the Lakers?
Yeah.
You were.
My first year was the year that he tore his Achilles.
Okay.
Which was crazy to witness right on the sideline. But yeah, that was a pretty pivotal moment. And it kind of goes with our conversation that we're having today about injuries. And then my second year was the year that he came back from that injury, but then he got a rotator cuff injury. And at that point, it's just kind of like old age and wear and tear on your body. He definitely did everything he possibly could. Yeah. But yeah, at that point, it's just something that happened, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, so Kobe's one of the greatest ever in his sport. And you had a chance to witness that. Like, was there something that you had a chance to see in him as you were dancing or as you witnessed him, like, just moving about the arena, whether he was on the court, off the court? Was there something that you witnessed in him that like stays with you now?
One thing is that he was always the first one to start warming up on the court. Like we would do our own rehearsal and then before the players would get there, but then he would be out way before all the players practicing his shots and things like that. And another thing that was awesome is that he would actually acknowledge us in a respectful way. Like he would say hi to us. We actually went on a trip to China my second year to play the 2 preseason games against the Warriors. And there was a moment on the plane where we kind of ran into each other and he asked me how I was and if I enjoyed the trip, which was really cool because like he does not have to do that. So it just showed that he cares about everybody.
Yeah, like he didn't walk around like he was a king. He walked around like he was a king, but like he didn't ignore his people, right? Like he acknowledged and blessed his people. That's really cool. That's really cool, Chloe. So I'm just curious, of all the celebrities that you've had a chance to dance with or for, or, be on stages, was there ever one that like really just stood out to you as like, oh my gosh, this is the one that I hold out above the rest?
Oh, definitely Gwen Stefani. It's kind of a funny story because when I was in 5th grade, we had a talent show and I did a dance to Holla Back Girl with my best friend. And so that was kind of another thing that made me believe in destiny because I almost feel like I manifested it.
Yeah.
at a young age. So yeah, she's definitely been my idol from No Doubt days to her solo days. And she's such a nice person too. She came to our rehearsal. She had her own input and just really wanted to focus on highlighting us as well in the performance. So yeah, she was awesome to work with.
Yeah, Gwen's, I mean, just watching her grow over the last like 2 decades. I mean, she's just, you know, from that hippie chick, or not hippie, but like outsider biker chick, you know, skateboarding girl. And then she's got all of these different dimensions to her now. She's still got that.
Yeah.
And then she's also got like the classy, the graceful. I mean, the amount of range that she has and like her excellence over the like those 2 decades has just continued to grow. So it's amazing and inspiring to watch.
Yeah. And she just doesn't age.
It's crazy. She's crazy. Yeah.
Goals.
Totally. All right. So let's dig in here. You know, like one of the most important things for me as I've gotten older is really focusing on like how to feel my best, look my best. And a big part of that is remaining injury free. You know, like I know what it's like to look good and to be able to put up big numbers in the gym, at least big numbers from my standards, probably not from like much bigger guy standards, but like always to have some sort of injury because, you know, I pushed myself too far. So like I remember like 10 years ago or 9 years ago, I did P90X when that big workout was like, you know, intense. And for 42 days, I was crushing it. Like I was taking these progress pictures. I looked as good as I ever had. And then on day 43, I tweaked something and I could never finish it. You know, 5 years ago when I did my first 100 consecutive push-up challenge, all I was thinking about was getting to the 100 push-ups. Like the first 6 weeks into the program, I tweaked something and I had to take 2 months off because I didn't know where the line was between, you know, normal pain and then strain and injury. And I see that happening for a lot of men. So what I would love is for us to start this conversation around how can we strive for excellence while also holding that deep desire of like, I want to walk through life feeling injury free, you know, and I recognize Kobe Bryant doesn't have that luxury because he's got to go out on the court and like things happen. Same thing with like athletes. But most of the people who are listening to this show like don't have any of that like responsibility. It's just, you know, like we have this desire to push, but how can we achieve without hurting ourselves? And I just love to hear, you know, your philosophy and where you begin on that.
Right. One thing is I think that people overlook, probably not as much as the other thing I'm going to talk about, but one thing is just to make sure you warm up. So warming up is going to activate the muscles. Just think about it. If you work out in the morning, you were sleeping all night, your muscles were not working. So you just need them to be stimulated and for them to know that it's time to work. Or if you work out after work, if you were sitting at a desk all day, your glutes are inactive, your core is inactive, you just need to prep your body for any movement that's going to come, that's going to follow. So, and it doesn't even have to be a very long warm up. I would say 5 minutes is substantial. Just getting your heart rate up, getting the body warm is just super important before starting any kind of lifting, especially the glutes and the core. They are two things that don't necessarily activate easily.
Really?
So yeah. So your core, you definitely have to like include core exercises in your warm up because your core is kind of where all the movement stems from. So you have to have a stable core in order to be lifting weights, working your arms and doing all these other things.
You know, to that point, Chloe, like with the core, so I was surprised when, for our listeners' context, inside the Great Man Mastermind, we are taking on the 100 consecutive push-up challenge, which is basically like, you know, it's a really big mountain to climb for men around pushing and living out over our edge, you know, physically speaking, but it's not just a physical exercise the way that we're doing it. It's about like learning where our edges are and learning how to do it injury-free, learning how to bring in other tools like visualization and attaching it to some higher calling, right? So there's a whole bunch of other stuff that is going to come out with that. And many of our listeners are going to have an opportunity to join the 100 push-up challenge that I'm going to be doing for our audience at a future date. One of the things I asked you to do for our group was to film 3 videos for our men to prep for the 100 push-up challenge. And it was a warm-up, a recovery, and then like proper form, you know, 3 things that most guys just completely ignore. And what I was surprised to find in your warm-up video was the emphasis in warming up the core. Because, I'm thinking push-ups, it's upper body. But I know I've done these over the number of years. Like I know how much my core is a part of it, but I've never warmed up my core. So can you talk about like why, and then just emphasize like why activating your core is so important?
Well, if you think about it, during a push-up, when your arms are straight, you're in a plank position. So in a plank, your core is working, right? So you have to be able to keep that solid foundation and that stability in your core as you're bending your arms up and down.
Yeah, one of the things I noticed, Chloe, is like when I'm doing my 100 push-ups, my first 40 or so feel like they're really coming from my chest or feel like they're coming from my upper body, even though I know everything's activated. But after my first burst, of 40, I got 60 left to go. And I sometimes rest at the top and I can really feel like my core, like really working hard to keep me engaged. And so if I haven't warmed up my core properly, and now I'm going to be going for 50 or 60, or 100 push-ups, do I face the risk of failing early? Do I face the risk of hurting myself because I haven't warmed up appropriately?
Yeah. So actually, there's a lot of reasons why activating the core before your push-ups or any workout is important, because it's not only going to help you in that plank position, but it's also going to make your whole entire body feel a little bit lighter. So you have to activate the core. If you're dropping your hips as well, that's just going to make the push-up even harder, because if your core isn't supporting the rest of your body, then the push-ups are just going to feel heavier, which is also why I emphasize like keeping your chin away from your chest, because people tend to drop their head. Your head is heavy. So when you're pushing up, it's going to feel a lot harder. So same thing with your core. Your core supports your hips and just helps everything stay in that one line.
So when I watch my 100 push-up video from 2015, one of the things that happens later in the like 70s, 80s, and 90s is my head drops all the way.
Right.
Yeah. And like, I know that this time around, I'm paying a lot more attention to keeping my head where you have instructed, because it was something I just wasn't even conscious of it until,
Right.
I watched the videotape afterwards.
Did you feel a difference?
Totally. Very much so. So yesterday we did 2 days of our Great Man Mastermind online virtually on Friday and Saturday. We did 4 hours apiece. And yesterday, every man tested out what his baseline of push-ups was. So like that was day one, and we have 90 days now of training. And so like I tested out yesterday, my first round of push-ups. I did 101 push-ups, which is great.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. Thank
so
you.
You don't even need the challenge.
No,
You're already there.
Yeah. Well, so that challenge has taught me a lot about myself, but I'd like to hit a new personal record. I think my most is about 110 or 111. But yesterday felt different because I didn't have any strain in my body. I feel some soreness today from just activated workout, but I don't feel like any strain from the 101 push-ups, which is different than how I went going through it before.
Because you stretched after?
Before, after, and like I was really attuned to my form throughout. And one of the things I said to all the guys, like when we were testing was, this is our first test. I don't need you to be a hero. Like if you feel a tweak coming on, collapse it and just like stop, and end it. And so I was just like relentless on my form the entire time. And I was surprised, because I haven't been training push-ups. I was surprised that I was able to bring it to 101 real quality push-ups with 15 guys watching.
Right. A lot of people think that push-ups are just an upper body exercise, but it really is a full body exercise. And that's actually a way that I kind of like to think about all exercises. You have to recruit other muscles of your body to aid you in the process, especially your core, because it's the center of everything. And that's just going to help you not overcompensate in one muscle. So for example, like if you're just compensating all in your shoulders, lifting your shoulders up to your ears, then you're going to definitely feel a lot more soreness in your shoulders the next day. So it's all about recruiting more muscles to work together.
Yeah. So let's talk about the other big muscle that you already mentioned, which are the glutes, right? And those, you said, they're the hardest to activate. So if there's one place of my body that there's like a little bit of body shame, it's my ass, because like, it's just not the thing that's naturally, I'm not gifted in the ass arena. I've had to work hard to get to average. And we had,
me too, honestly.
Are you? So is ass like your hardest too?
Yeah. I mean, I was actually working on it before quarantine started. I was actually trying to work more on it and doing hip thrusts and things like that, more heavy. lifting.
That is a thing that most, like, we say guys, we go to the gym and we're doing like beach muscles. So like upper body, biceps, and then we have chicken legs. I know that like when I got my friend Marina gave me the proper amount of body shaming a few years ago, where she just like looked at my ass and she's like, "What's up with your ass? Like why's your ass why's your ass the only non-hard thing? Like everything else looks like it's in good shape, but what's that?" And it was done lovingly. It was like done lovingly, but like it actually catalyzed this desire for me to like I'm like, why am I ignoring it? I haven't been on the squat rack in years. So the last few years, like I've done a lot of squats and I feel much more strong structurally speaking. And we had an episode maybe a few months ago with a personal trainer named Dan Go, who's a friend of mine, how to build a high performance body to support your high performance business. And he said, if I want to look at the healthiest entrepreneur, I'm going to line 5 guys up. I'm going to spin them around. I'm going to look at their asses. And the strongest ass is the guy who's probably like firing the best. So why should men pay more attention to activating glutes? And then what are some exercises that we can do that will activate our glutes before a workout?
I feel like the glutes, there's so many muscles in the glutes. You have your glute max, your glute medius, and your glute minimus. So maybe even if you are trying to work it out, you're not getting all of the muscles. So there's so many muscles just in that one area. And these muscles are responsible for the movement of your pelvis, which is basically responsible for the movement of your entire lower body. So it all stems from the glutes, which is why it's super important to warm those up, especially in the beginning of your workout. One good warm-up exercise to do to activate your glutes is squats. And I like to make sure that I'm holding a squat for a little bit longer and maybe pulsing it in the warm-up. Oh, here's another thing. I feel like there's so many things we could talk about, but proper squat form. So when you're in a squat, your weight needs to be in your heels, not in your toes. If your weight is in your heels, then you're going to feel it more in your glutes and your hamstrings. If your weight is more in your toes, you'll feel it more in your quads. So that's a super important thing, to just learn to shift the weight back into your heels. And maybe you won't be able to go as low, but that's going to work your glutes. Another thing is good mornings, which are a deadlift, but without the weight. So you're hinging from the hips and pushing your glutes back. And that's going to stretch the hamstrings and activate the glutes as well. Yeah.
So the pushing the glutes back and are you keeping a straight back? Like you're not bending over, you're keeping that's like the most important part, right? It's kind of like standing up straight and then going to a 90-degree hinge and then pushing your ass back as much as you can.
Yeah, exactly. So Trying to get your glutes back to the back wall, but keeping your knees slightly bent. But it's different than a squat, because squat, you're bending your knees more. And good morning, you're just hinging from the hips.
Okay. So if we're talking about like this 5-minute warm up, right, that you said that's all we need to, it could get the job done. Like we could probably use more than a 5-minute warm up, but the glute exercises you just gave us, what would be some good core exercises to warm ourselves up in that 5-minute?
Planks are a really good warm up exercise. And you can start on your forearms too. Okay. And I like to do shifts forward and back when I'm in that plank position, because that kind of just activates the shoulders too and just shows you kind of where your plank should be. Mountain climbers, because those also get the heart rate up.
Mountain climbers as a warm up, you are hardcore.
I mean, also in your warm up, you should be kind of tailoring it to your workout and also just what your body needs. So if you're feeling tight that day, maybe before you even warm up, you take a few minutes on the foam roller to loosen up your muscles so that you even can get to these warm-up moves.
Let's talk about the foam rollers, okay? Because those are like mini torture devices. So we hear a lot about fascial release, right? So what is the definition of fascia? How does it show up in our bodies? And then what do the foam rollers do that help, loosen us up and prevent us from hurting ourselves?
Yeah. So fascia is the layer that kind of encompasses all of the muscles. It's not your skin, but it's just a thin kind of layer that sometimes can get really tight. So it's important to just loosen it up with the foam roller. You might have lactic acid built up from any previous workouts. Maybe you're feeling sore. So this kind of just relieves any tension. And it also just gets blood flowing to that certain area, which is super important when you want to warm up your body.
Yeah. So when you say it's not when fascia covers your entire body, it's not skin. I've heard it described like it's kind of like cellophane. When it tightens, then that's what can cause injury. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, pretty much. It's like collagen. It encompasses your muscles and your organs. Something actually really common is plantar fasciitis, and I actually had that in my foot before, but it's when just the layer of fascia in your foot tightens, which is why it can tighten also your muscles and then just make you feel pain.
Ah, okay. And so that's why like the foam roller is the thing that takes like the tight fascia and it loosens it up. Am I hitting that correctly?
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Exactly.
And the benefit of that is like we're more limber. Like what's the benefit of?
You have more range of motion.
Okay.
Which is important to note that when you do a good warm up, your workout is going to be better. So if you kind of think about it in that mindset, you'll have more range of motion. You'll be able to squat deeper, lunge deeper, deadlift further.
Yeah. Okay. So now this is getting me thinking like if I have a 60-minute workout and Chloe Corpuz is going to design it for me, like as a 41-year-old man who like values being injury free and also like getting a really kick-ass workout in, like how much time would you dedicate for me, my warm up? How much time would you dedicate on the back end for my recovery? And then how much of that 60 minutes would you put into the workout itself?
Do you mean recovery after the warm up or?
I'm sorry, like recovery after the workout itself. So it's like, you know, my warm up at the front end, my workout in the middle, and then the recovery time at the end, the stretching recovery. Like how would you build that 60 minutes for me?
Okay. So I would say warm up 5 minutes.
Okay.
And then workout 45 minutes and then cool down 10 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. We've been talking about the warm up this whole time. We haven't really touched base on the cool down yet, which I actually think is a little bit more overlooked because that's the time, especially in group fitness classes where everybody is rushing to the showers or they're just tired and they just want to go home. But that's actually probably, I mean, I don't want to say more important than the warm up, but it's just as important.
As important. Well, yeah. And it looks like you dedicated twice as much time to the cool down, right? So the warm up is 5 minutes. The cool down is 10. Is there any magic reason for that?
Yeah. So in your warm up, you want to do more dynamic stretching, which is instead of holding a stretch and like holding for 30 seconds, you're kind of just going in and out.
Ah, yeah.
So the muscle can contract and release. And then in your cool down, that's where you can do more of your static stretching, holding for 30 seconds. And that's where you can work on your flexibility. I mean, I personally usually cool down for 30 minutes because,
do you?
Yeah, because I like to foam roll and then I like to stretch for a long time. And because I'm trying to maintain my dancer flexibility, which can be kind of hard sometimes when you're building strength in your legs. So just for me, I'm not saying that everybody has to do this, but I prefer to do a long cool down. And I've actually noticed that it makes me less sore the next day if I do a longer stretch.
I got to really work on that because like soreness can stick with me for a while. But in the last year, when I've really started to take my recovery seriously, I started going to see a man named Joe who runs Premier Sports Recovery. And I did fascial stretch therapy for my legs. And like during squats, it used to take me 3-4 days to like really fully recover. Like it just, there was something about even my own stretching just wouldn't do it. And as soon as I started going to him, especially after leg days or even before leg days, the next day I was fine. You know, and he would take my leg, he would bend me in a pretzel, he would, you know, rotate certain things. I guess the synovial fluid would get into my joints or whatever it is. Like, I got to tell you, it was almost like magic how quickly I recovered. So if you have the time, if you have the means, this stuff really, really works.
Yeah, you're totally right. And I think those times that I do feel a lot less sore the next day is the times when I'm working out with my trainer because he'll stretch my leg and then hold it for a minute or so. So it does help to have somebody or something aid in your stretch just to help it get a little bit deeper and make it a little more active.
Cool. Okay. So I like this distinction of like, you know, I'm thinking about my warm up. It should really be dynamic. So I'm not like holding a stretch very long. I'm like, you know, doing squats side to side, you know, I'm doing the squats up and down, like to activate my glutes. And then the core, like the plank that you were talking about where I'm going front back. So I'm like moving things to get things warm.
Right. Downward dog and pedaling out your feet helps, or like from going from downward dog back to a plank, or even going into a forward fold, stretching the hamstrings while bending and straightening the knees. That's dynamic as opposed to just holding it there with extended knees.
These are all things that we can do at home without any equipment. And when I'm typically at the gym, like when Equinox opens back up, what I typically have done is like I spend usually 10 to 12 minutes on the elliptical before I get going into anything. Is that enough?
Yeah, that's really good too.
Is that good? Yeah.
I would say that's pretty good for a warm up, but that's really good for activating the glutes and the hamstrings and getting your heart rate up. But maybe you just want to do like a couple more stretches for your upper body or a little bit more activation for your core before you get started.
That is really helpful. I never really thought so. Like the elliptical is really not enough for like a full. It's good. It's better than nothing, but it just doesn't get the core and the upper body part.
Or I guess if you have your hands on the handles, I guess you're using your arms.
Yes, I do have my hands on the handles. Yeah, but I'm still missing my core, right? You're still saying that there's still a part of it that could probably use more core activation.
Right. Unless you're actively trying to think about activating your core while you're on the elliptical. But it is really hard for your core to know to activate unless you intentionally do it.
Okay. And then why is it important that I'm not doing static stretching during the warm-up?
Because if you're doing static stretching, your muscle will lengthen and then it will just stay at that state, which is not the state that we want it to be in during your lifting, because you want it to be able to contract and release still and not just held out at that released kind of position.
Okay. So we want it to be like kind of like a rubber band that has an ability to come in and out.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a perfect way to describe it.
Then why do we want static stretching in the last 10 minutes? Like why do we want our muscles lengthened all the way like that?
Because your muscles are warm from your workout. So you do have the ability to stretch them out even more. And stretching is just going to help you in general. It's going to help with your joints, with your mobility. So your muscle is eventually going to go back to that original position. But this is just the perfect time while your muscles are warm to hold those stretches a little bit longer.
Okay. And yeah, I can see if my muscles aren't warm when I'm doing my warm up, right? Like I've been sitting on my ass all day in front of a computer and then like I go and do this workout. If I try and stretch, it's like taking something like the rubber band could snap. Like I could probably.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to describe it.
All right, cool. You see how much free consulting I'm getting right now from Chloe on all this? Like I'm just getting a personal training. So this 10-minute cool down, she's designing my 60-minute workout. This is great.
Try it out, let me know.
Yes, this is my diabolical scheme to just like never pay for coaching again. I'll just interview all of my favorite people. This 10-minute cool down, the 5-minute warm up is core and glutes. Let's say if for my push-up routine, which like we're going to be training for the next 9 days, like what would a 10-minute cool down look like for something like that?
For after working the upper body, I definitely really like that stretch where you stand up against the wall with your arm bent and you stretch out the front of your chest. That's actually really important to do often because we spend so much time in front of phones and computers with our shoulders hunched forward. Naturally, most people are a little bit more tight in the chest. So, and especially if you just work them out really hard, you want to be able to stretch them out so we can have good posture. So you did your push-ups. I would stretch the wrists.
Yeah, like you did an emphasis on that. And that was one thing I've never think about warming up is my wrists. Tell me more about like that. Why?
Yeah, it's actually something that I noticed recently that a lot of people in my class have wrist issues. And I was kind of trying to think about why that might be. Like a lot of times it's old age and arthritis, but it's just if we spend so much time with our wrist in this flex position, it can kind of ruin some of the cartilage that we have in our wrists. So it's just important to make sure that they're active and mobile 360 degrees around and also stretching them out the other way as opposed to the way that they are in planks. Because I actually have been noticing I've been doing a lot of planks and stuff on my wrists at home recently. So I've been actually having to warm up my wrists even more. And actually, that's a good thing to also include in your warm up. Maybe we're going on to 15 minutes now, but.
Yeah. And soon I'm going to have my 30-minute cool down just like Chloe has hers. And I will not be nearly as flexible as Chloe will be.
Yeah. I mean, the longer, the better. But I know like people, like we're busy. I mean, maybe not now, but.
Yeah, but people are busy no matter what. I mean, it seems like to be a chronic condition. Yeah, so stretching the wrists is a big one, and I never think to do that. Okay, so what other injuries are you seeing? Like you said that seems to be pretty prevalent in your classes that you teach? Like, what are some other common ailments and complaints that people are bringing to your classes?
Plantar fasciitis is one of them. And I can actually relate to that because I have had that before. It's basically just, like I said, your fascia gets tight and the muscles of your feet aren't really working as hard as they should. You might have a sharp pain in your heel or some other part of your foot. And this actually, for me, I think it stems from wearing really supportive shoes, but then not stretching out my feet after. So my first fitness job in New York was teaching dance cardio. That's actually where I learned a lot about my body because I was kind of having different issues in my body because these classes, I would be doing the entire thing 10 times a week. It was an hour class and it was basically, you were just jumping the entire time, dancing and jumping and burpees and cardio. So it was pretty intense. And that's when I kind of started to feel that stuff in my feet. But then I realized when I would take ballet classes, it would feel better because you're really working through your feet. So there's so many things that we have to do, but yeah, but just stretching your feet every once in a while. I mean, especially if you have plantar fasciitis, there's a lot of things you can do about it, like stretching your feet or rolling out on a foot roller.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Like the two things that I wouldn't ever really think to stretch are my feet or my wrists. These are two things that you see as big ailments in classes. And how about like back pain seems to be a big thing that I know a lot of people are carrying around. Do you see that a lot in your classes too?
Yes, a lot of lower back pain, which full circle, this also stems from having a weak core because if your core muscles are not activated and they're just loose, it's going to create an arch in your back, which is going to put a lot of pressure on your low spine. So that's why it's really important to strengthen the core to support all of those muscles in the spine so you can stand tall and it won't be a problem. I mean, this is probably obvious, but Pilates is definitely the best possible core workout. I thought I had a strong core and then I started taking Pilates and I was like, wow, I have a lot more to work on because I mean, your core is comprised of so many different muscles. It's not just the six pack, which is the rectus, which is most people think about when they think of their core, but there's first of all, muscles underneath. There's your obliques. There's your transverse abdominis, which is the deepest layer, and it's a little bit more your lower abs. And then your core actually wraps around your entire low back. So
it wraps around your entire low back, your core does?
Yeah. Basically, your core is your entire torso. That's like what the true definition of your core is. Most of the time we are talking about abs when we say core, but there's so many little muscles that also go around the back that need to be strengthened as well.
Fascinating. Okay. So like lower back pain is probably a great indicator that like there's a weakened core that needs some help and support.
Yeah. There's also other causes that can cause lower back pain, like tight hips. Sitting at a desk all day, your hips are in the front of your hip flexors are in this flexed, shortened position. So if your hips are tight and pulling in this shortened position, that's also going to cause an arch in your back. We call it an anterior pelvic tilt. So that will also put more pressure on your low back. So another thing is that you need to stretch your hips.
Let's talk about that. You were saying the front of your hip flexors. Like that is the one place that I feel like I'm woefully, well, that and my ass. So now we've got a few woeful parts. So like in the front, I fatigue really quickly with the front hip flexors. So what do I do to warm those up? What do I do to strengthen those?
Yeah, a lot of people do have weak and or tight hips. So another thing that you can add to your warm up is making circles with your legs to warm up the hips. Lifting your knee. I'm like trying to show you right now. But like lifting your knee to your chest.
Yep.
That'll warm up and also strengthen the hips. And I think like what a lot of people don't know is that your hips are comprised of a bunch of different muscles, different insertion points. So part of your low back is also connected to your hip.
Huh.
So you have your hip flexors in the front, and then in the back you have your piriformis. There's a bunch of different muscles of the hips. You have your hip flexors in the front, and then you also have your piriformis that actually connects from the front of your hip all the way back to your lumbar spine, which is your lower back. So if that's tight, then you can imagine you're also going to have low back problems.
Okay. Yeah, these are some really specific areas for me, and I know that a lot of people are struggling with these as well. Chloe, is there anything else sitting on top of all of these different classes that you've taught and all of the people that you see coming with great physical shape and then also, injuries. Is there anything else that you would want someone like a group of men who are trying to become the best versions of themselves while also maintaining an injury-free lifestyle? Is there anything else that you think we need to know about how we go about our, workout routines?
Yeah, there's actually a few different things that I think would enhance your workout routine. One is what we were kind of talking about is just listen to your body and have that body awareness. Even if you don't know exactly what's bothering you, if you know like, hey, my shoulder hurts today, it kind of feels like a sharp pain, maybe you can just take a rest day, try and figure out what it is. So if you have a trainer, you can kind of let them know what's happening. That's why it's really important when an instructor asks if anybody has any injuries that you let he or she know. I think people are intimidated to kind of announce it to the world. And you can always go up to your instructor like before class and just tell them really quick. That's another precaution to make sure that you don't hurt yourself unless you know modifications that you can do. So if you are feeling any sort of like sharp pain that might be joint related, I would say take a rest day and not just try and push through pain. Again, like you were saying, there's a difference between pain and soreness, and sometimes it is kind of hard to distinguish between the two, but I think the more you kind of listen to what your body's trying to tell you, the more you'll be able to figure it out.
Yeah, and to that point, Chloe, and before you continue is, one of the things that we're talking about in the mastermind is knowing where your edge is. And instead of blowing past it or tipping over it, refining your awareness, honing in on like where that edge is, where if you were to do one more rep or one more push-up or one more whatever, like you would then incur some sort of injury that could be with you for weeks, months, or even years. So Chloe, when you talk about this concept of body awareness and how important it is, how about you? How have you cultivated body awareness and like, what are you listening to? Because I know I asked you, like you danced for the Lakers for how many years? 2 years?
Yeah.
And the Knicks for 2 years also. And like, you said you never incurred an injury that took you off the court. So like, what is it that you're paying attention to inside of you so that we can like try to do that for ourselves?
Right. I mean, there are definitely times where I, or any athlete or person will kind of have to push through, like if it's your job and you literally just like, and you literally just have to. It's all about kind of planning it out. Like if I know that I had a game or rehearsal that day, maybe I wouldn't go as hard on my workout. Or if I was feeling any sort of pain, maybe I'll take a rest day. So I think it's just about listening to your body, knowing the difference between pain and soreness, and also knowing the difference between getting that one more rep in. It's going to hurt, but are you feeling some kind of other pain that might not feel right? I mean, I think that it's kind of hard to explain, but you just have to experience both to know the difference.
Yeah, I think you have to just make it a priority to actually listen. The first step is like having the desire of, I don't want to be injured, therefore I'm going to listen to my body in a different way. Because that was never, for my first 35 years of working out or athletics, I never really listened to my body in that way. It was just kind of like, I'm going to go as hard as I possibly can until I collapse. That was just how I was trained. And now it's different.
Yeah, I'm a super non-believer in the phrase no days off.
Oh yeah, same. Super non-believer over here too, Chloe.
Yeah, because I mean, even if you just take 1 to 2 rest days per week, that's all your body needs. And your rest is just as important as your workout.
So down with that. Well, on that point then, I think the last place where I want to go is when I'm resting, one of the favorite things that I like to do while resting is sitting on that couch that's behind me, watching that television with the TV show Breaking Bad. And yes. I believe you told me that you are a Breaking Bad fan as well. Am I correct?
I am. That is right.
Okay. Like, do you have a favorite character on the show? Because we just need to know if you're credible or not.
Oh, definitely Jesse Pinkman.
That's a good one. That's right. That's right. We were texting about that, right? That you were like, Pinkman's your boy. Didn't you like wait in line at Comic-Con or something like that to meet him?
Yeah. That's actually kind of embarrassing, but it wasn't the actual Comic-Con. He was doing a meet and greet at an Urban Outfitters that was near the Comic-Con venue. So I went to that. I was in line for probably 5-6 hours. And it was funny because since it was Comic-Con and everybody is in costumes everywhere, he just walked by the entire line wearing a mask and nobody noticed it was him. And I wasn't paying attention, but my friend who I was with noticed that his wife, because he was with his wife, so she was just out in the open and he had a mask on and it just walked past us right into the store.
That's as close as you got to Jesse Pinkman.
Yeah. Well, then I met him when I got to the top of the line and he was super nice.
Yeah, I think I told you that I didn't meet. So his real name is Aaron Paul, and Jesse Pinkman is his legendary character, which he played just impeccably. And I bumped into him at the LAX airport, and you asked me, you were like, was it in some like VIP section or where was it? And I was like,
yeah, assuming that you take VIP section to the airport.
Yeah, and I was like, no, actually, it was in the bathroom right off the baggage claim. And I was walking to the urinal and he this guy, leather jacket, like flushed the urinal, turned around, and it was face to face with Jesse Pinkman. It was just me and him. And we both like just kind of looked at each other. And I've been told sometimes, like, they're like, people are like, yeah, you remind me of Jesse Pinkman, the way that you look. And so he probably looked at me and was kind of like, that guy looks like me. And,
oh my God, yes.
That was our only moment. And I don't know if you remember Hector Salamanca, who was in the wheelchair with the ding. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I met him at Astor Style Hair Play, where I get my barber, like where I get my hair cut. I met him.
Wow. You're meeting all the characters.
Listen, you're manifesting Gwen Stefani. I'm manifesting the entire cast of Breaking Bad. And
I'm jealous.
I actually went when I got a speaking gig out in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I went to the car wash, took a selfie. I went to some of the restaurant scenes and like ate there. And I also drove to Walter White's house. And they have I think so many super fans went to the house. The story goes that some people went to the house and threw pepperoni pizzas on the roof. If you remember that scene.
Oh my God, yeah.
So they have these like big beware signs on the front lawn, like do not approach private property. You'll be arrested. So like I didn't get close enough, but I got close enough to see the house in person.
Does somebody else actually live there?
People live there. The garage doors were open when I drove by, and there were people sitting there like in the garage. And when I drove, they all stopped what they were doing and they looked right at me. So I just banged a left and went down the street.
Wow, you really are a huge super fan. Did you ever do any of Aaron Paul's scavenger hunts?
I don't know what those are.
He would do scavenger hunts over Twitter and be like, meet me at this place. I mean, I've never done it, but it would be definitely madness.
Oh my gosh. I'm not on Twitter. It's the one social media platform I just haven't gotten into, but like, had I? Yes, I would be doing his advice. Yes, I would be.
Maybe it was a good thing that you didn't have a Twitter.
I know. Good stuff. Well, Chloe, thank you so much for jumping on here and making sure that like the men in our community are striving for excellence, physically speaking, and also remaining injury free. And if the men who have been listening here want to follow you, like what are the best places to follow you and how?
My Instagram at Chloe Corpuz, ChloCorpuz.
It's not Chloe. It's not CLOE.
Not on Instagram. That name is taken.
Really? Someone else?
Yeah, I should contact her and maybe buy it off of her. But
so Chloe Corpuz on Instagram, and you have some workouts on YouTube like that people can kind of get a sample?
I actually do have a couple workouts on Set Model Management YouTube. It's my modeling agency, a fitness modeling agency. So during quarantine, we kind of all put together a bunch of different workout videos, and they're all together in that one platform. It's called Steps Fit Life, STETTS.
I'm going to link that.
Okay, thanks. And yeah, I actually was thinking about like working on my own YouTube channel too. I just like haven't gotten around to it. I just ordered a new computer, so I need to do that first because my computer is not up to par.
Not up
with
to task.
All of that video editing, yeah. But yeah, there's actually one more thing that I wanted to add to advice.
Please.
Well, it kind of has to do with the YouTube, but just another thing that I wanted to add to what people can do to continue to perform at a high level is to diversify your workouts. I feel like a lot of people are nervous or scared to kind of change up the routine, and it's good to have a routine. It keeps you on track, but maybe one day you take a Pilates class, or maybe another day you take a yoga class, or even just a HIIT class, a group fitness class, and that'll just train your body to be prepared for anything in life and also enhance the skill or routine that you're already working towards. And that's also something else you can do on your rest days. You don't necessarily need to be sitting on the couch doing nothing. You can do an active recovery, whether that's like stretching, something super low impact, just making sure that your body is getting what it needs.
That's really helpful to diversify your workouts, because I remember it was P90X, the thing that injured me, but it also was the thing that introduced me to yoga, because like on day 6 or day 7, it was yoga. And I remember like really enjoying it, even though their yoga was like super intense yoga. It wasn't really restorative yoga. But I remember that was kind of like my portal, my entry point to diversifying my workouts. So Pilates is going to be a tough sell for a group of men, for not every man, but like it's going to be a tough sell, I would say, for the large majority of our listeners. I've taken Pilates classes and I know exactly what you're talking about. It's humbling because I believe I have a pretty strong core too. But I like this concept of, maybe one day training heavy in weights, another day doing a HIIT class, another day doing Pilates, another day doing yoga, because it will train my body to use all of its different muscles. Yeah, I can get down with that.
Yeah. And a lot of people, when they think of yoga, they probably think of housewives with their yoga mats that have nothing to do, and that it's mostly females. But actually at Equinox, there are a lot of men taking the yoga classes too. And a lot of people, it is a spiritual experience. Maybe a lot of people might not be on that level. I'm sure your men are, but
it can be a spiritual experience. But in our mastermind, we have a man in our group whose name is Mark Melvin, and he's fantastic at teaching yoga to people who have never been able to do yoga before. And the feedback that he's been given is like, he's been a bridge builder. Like he's helped to translate, make sense of it. Like, why should I be breathing while I'm moving? And I think what you're talking about, Chloe, is like, you have to find the right entry point that someone can speak to you in a way where you're like, oh, this makes sense, because yoga has unquestionable benefits.
Right. And if anything, you'll just be getting a good stretch and be doing great things for your body physically.
Well, Chloe, this is all great stuff. Thank you. I'm going to link your Instagram account. I'm going to link your YouTube channel or Stet's channel where they can watch your video. And actually, I think I've seen one of your videos on there and done one of your workouts on YouTube, which is great. And yeah, we'll probably be taking one of your classes at some point this week.
Thank you so much for having me. That was fun.
Hey, like I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, I've hired Chloe a number of times to run workouts for the men of the Great Man Mastermind over Zoom. And if you would like to hire Chloe to do some one-on-one personal training or to run a small group workout for your family, for your friends, or for your business colleagues, whoever, she's made her business email address available, which I'm going to link in the show notes. And if for whatever reason you want to write it down right now, it's chloecorpuz12@gmail.com. And I'll spell it for you. Chloe, Chloe, Corpuz, Corpuz, and the number 12@gmail.com. Hey, Brian and I wanted to thank you for the ratings and reviews that you leave us. We read every single one of them, and they're so helpful in helping us to understand what resonates with you and helps us determine which topics that we use in the future. So if you found this episode to be of particular value to you, will you please leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts so that we know that this is the kind of topic you want to hear more about? And it also helps other prospective listeners to figure out where they can dive in first. Thank you.